I'm a publisher. I'm in the business of trying to get the world to know why the Arctic and, of course, by association, the Antarctic, are relevant to today's lives in the rest of the world. And how do I say this? I find that when people read the material we publish on Arctic Today, they are inevitably fascinated and wishing they'd known it earlier. And yet it's very tough to get people to want to read about something before they start that doesn't seem the slightest bit relevant to their ordinary lives. So that's my challenge, and that's what I talked about. I became an Alaskan later in life, and so I became a person who's close to the poles. And as we like to say, there really is an Arctic identity, because there are tens of millions of people who live above the Arctic or just south of the Arctic, all around the world. And we have an awful lot in common. What we have in common the most, unfortunately, is we are the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, for climate change. And what I hope to be able to do with this communication platform we've built is to model for the rest of the world how to begin to really put specifics around the notion of sustainable development, because since we are more threatened by the changing climate than others, earlier than others, I think we have a responsibility to lead the way. And I haven't been able to make that happen yet in news content or in fact, but I'm also part of starting an Arctic infrastructure investment business. And I hope we can be part of financing the projects that really demonstrate that notion. So that's my other challenge.
So as an Alaskan, how would you define sustainable development?
Well, that's the unanswerable question. Now, I know how I would define it, but whether I could get the world to agree to define it that way or not is my challenge. The first thing I would do if I could wave a magic wand would be to start a green bank, a financing bank, for any project that not only has no carbon footprint or emissions, but that does the reverse. There are some intriguing technologies out there that, quite frankly, I can't even find in the marketplace yet that do carbon capture, and it frustrates me that I can't find them. Wearing my news hat, that's one of the things I want to start to change, is to make that information more broadly available to the world. How do we make sure that anything we do physically in the polar regions is not only not harmful, but net beneficial? That's a physical challenge, and I don't know what the answers are to that. The second one is, how do we make sure that the world is working in harmony there? And that's where it becomes geostrategic. I don't think that the U.S. under its current president or China or Russia are working to advance the interests of global harmony and solutions to the climate. I think the reverse is happening, and it's become a zero-sum game, and that's when everybody loses. I think that learning to operate in remote climates is a universal challenge. And so to the extent that the science can be helpful in sharing knowledge between the two polar research communities, that's great. I'm not sure there's much more to be learned except for the geostrategic challenges. And that's where I find this, quite frankly, stark and frightening comparability that, again, the great power actors are not acting well in either pole. And we just better be aware of what's happening in both places. Until I came here, I really hadn't known what the Chinese presence in Antarctica was looking like. And now that I hear it, it sounds scarily familiar. Now, I'm not a believer in bashing nationalities. I think Chinese people are as fine as any people. But I do believe that the way they are governed tells me that it's their government that is pushing a way of acting that shows up all around the world. And The rest of us shouldn't be naive about it. Or in 100 or 200 years, we'll all be dominated by the Chinese, dribbling out the rare earth minerals to those who please their government the best. That's just not my idea of the ideal human condition.